So I feel like in the spirit of YouTube movie reviews, I've got to do this video standing. Also, I'm going to take this jacket off because it's getting kind of hot in here. So A Quiet Place, day one. I've got to say right off the bat here, they did not just create some horror movie origin story bullshit and try to cash in on the name A Quiet Place. They've actually written quite a compelling story here. And Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn are the two characters, Samira and Eric, who we look through the eyes and ears of to see the aftermath of the invasion of the aliens on day one in New York City. I'll say right now, I've never actually been to New York City, but from my understanding and what's alluded to at the beginning of this movie, it's supposed to be one of the loudest places on Earth. And the way they show you how loud this city is in the movie is we kind of follow this group of people that have entered the city after being somewhere else for a little bit. And when they're speaking to each other and trying to have some dialogue, it's actually kind of hard to hear them while you're sitting in the movie theater because of the sounds of the city, and the sirens and the cars and the construction actually overpowers what they're saying and the conversation they're trying to have. And I've got to say, it's a really cool technical sound device to be able to illustrate how loud this place is before it goes dead silent, which we know is going to happen in this movie. First off, Joseph Quinn. I'm super glad he's not just a typecast Eddie Munson in this movie, and his character actually gets a lot of room to grow, and the way he shows emotion through his facial expressions, I think is really impressive, because you got to remember, this is a movie about silence. These characters have to be quiet, otherwise it's their life on the line. And the way that Joseph Quinn shows his fear and his slow realization that the world might be ending here in this movie is super impressive. But Joseph Quinn is only the support act in this movie, and I'm super glad to say that Lupita Nyong'o really drives and carries this story right from the beginning to the very end. All right, so this movie starts out with Lupita Nyong'o in clearly what's a very down part of her life. Like, her body language is slouched, her voice lacks excitement, and she is just talking about everything in her life that is shit around her. Like, literally, there is nothing good that comes out of her mouth at the start of this movie, and it's really funny. And I don't mean funny in the sense that what's happening to her is funny, because it's actually quite sad, and you learn a bit later on about what's going on with her character and where she is in her life. But at the start, it's just kind of like a little kid that is refusing to see the brighter side of a situation, and that's why it's super funny to me. Now the shit's hit the fan, the invasion has occurred, and Samira and Eric are united in this situation without any kind of sense of what to do or where to go. And that's probably my favorite part of this movie. And that's the contrast between the characters of Eric and Samira, because Eric is actually really confused on what to do here, and he's got no one around him that he can go to when he finds Samira. And then Samira is really down on her luck and just super sad and depressed. So she's really not looking for anyone to tag along with her. But Eric just wants to find someone to kind of attach himself to and feel a lot better about what's going on at the moment. The best way I think I can describe these two characters is to say that Samira is a character who has pretty much given up on human connection. Her life is already meaningless at the moment, and that is not something that's going to bring her any kind of happiness, or at least she thinks that. And then Eric, on the other hand, is someone that is lacking human connection at the moment, but he is really trying to sort after it, because it's more important to him than survival at the start of this movie. Also, Jimon Hunso is in this movie. I think that's how you pronounce it, but you would have seen him in the trailer as well, and he is playing the same character he did in A Quiet Place Part 2, and it's cool to see that through line in this movie and where he was on day one versus where he ends up in A Quiet Place Part 2 as well. Speaking of A Quiet Place Part 2, though, A Quiet Place Day 1 is not directed by John Krasinski. However, I believe it still has the same writing team as the 2018 movie and A Quiet Place Part 2 as well. So John Krasinski is still part of this franchise, and he still had a hand in writing this movie, which I think is all the better for it, because it's really unfortunate when movies in Hollywood change up writers and change up directors, and then there's a lack of consistency that happens between sequel movies, which is really annoying. So to see John Krasinski is still part of this franchise and the same writing team is pretty much attached to all three movies just makes the whole movie a lot more of an enjoyable watch, because it flows so easily into those other two movies. Speaking of directors though, this movie is directed by Michael Sarnowski, and I think he did a really good job with this movie. The tone in this movie is the same as what you felt in A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, which once again really helps with that consistency that's felt overall between these three movies. And another thing I think he did really well in directing this movie is a lot of the shots when it's really quiet in the movie is directed towards the source of a small sound. So for instance, if it was the wheels on a trolley or a little bell or someone's footsteps, there's always a close-up that shows that action happening that's creating the sound. And it makes a scene where you're trying to stay away from the aliens and every sound matters. It really intensifies that scene and heightens it even more. I think I've said a lot about what I already like about this movie. And in terms of cons, there isn't that many, to be honest. Maybe one of the things I think it could have improved on are the actual scares. I think I counted maybe 2 or 3 jump scares that happen in this entire movie. They're a little bit cheap. They could have been done better, I think. But in terms of actual scares and what makes this movie scary, I think it's just the environment and being in a position where you have to be so quiet that it is a life or death situation. That's what makes this movie so scary, rather than a lot of cheap jump scares that you would see in a normal horror film. So if I were to give A Quiet Place Day 1 a rating, I would definitely rewatch this movie. Just to give a quick bit of context to the rating I gave this movie, for my movie reviews, I really wanted to do a word-based rating system, very similar to what Jeremy Jahns does with his movie reviews. I honestly think the system he has for his ratings is a perfect system. I really, really do enjoy it, and it's much different to what a lot of other publications do with star ratings or ABC or even just numerical ratings. I think that stuff gets really boring, and I think the way people see things is or the way people understand things and connect with things is through emotion rather than a numerical figure that you give something. So for a piece of art like this, I wanted to give it a kind of feeling that you walk away with rather than a numerical figure that you can compare with any other publication or anyone else that does movie reviews. For reference as well, the other ratings that I would give a movie include trash, because let's face it, some movies do just need to be thrown in a bin. Waste of time, because you probably could have been doing something better with your life instead of watching this movie. Wouldn't rewatch. Not necessarily bad, but I wouldn't probably spend time watching this movie again. Solid, because I think it's a good movie. I don't think I would watch it again at the same time, but who knows? Maybe I would watch again, because I definitely see myself wanting to see this movie again, and I enjoyed it enough to want to spend time doing it again. And amazing, because some movies just go above and beyond. And amazing isn't necessarily to say the movie is perfect. A perfect movie can be amazing, while an amazing movie doesn't necessarily mean that it is perfect. So that's the rating system. That's the review. Go watch A Quiet Place Day 1.